Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Tonight we are going to be covering the topic of getting pitch ready. So this is pre-season for referees. We have Cliona O'Connor on, who's going to be presenting tonight, and Cliona has a vast amount of experience regarding everything strength and condition and preparation. She has a huge background in ladies football, where she played with Dublin when they won the All-Ireland in 2010 and was a member of the Dublin senior ladies panel for a number of years. We'll not go into how many exactly. She also has 2 All-Stars to her name, and more importantly, as a coach then, she has developed and went through. She has a master's in strength and conditioning and has coached with Coola hurlers when they won their All-Ireland in 2017 and 18, and most recently been involved in the background team of the Dublin senior hurling. She also is one of our head coach developers with ladies Gaelic football and is our real guru and somebody we go to with anything regarding fitness training, strength and conditioning, and she's a vast amount of experience. So we welcome Cliona O'Connor on to lead this topic tonight, and hopefully we all have a really great interactive session throughout it.
Thanks a million, Claire. So a couple of intro slides here. We have a presentation for about 50 minutes, and any time throughout, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat, and Claire will be monitoring that, and she'll stop me when I'm waffling and ask the important questions that you've put in the chat. Yeah, if you can't hear or any of that, just opt out and then join back in. The usual Zoom stuff. And the agenda for tonight. So, done. Welcome. I guess it's interesting for me because 92% of the time I'm dealing with players. So anytime Claire asks me or Lynn or anyone asks me to get involved on the referees, it's always interesting to look at the demands from another person's perspective. So same thing, referees versus players. You're preparing for the same season, so the same principles should apply. So what we're going to talk about tonight is, what are you preparing for as a referee? What would a good pre-season look like? The physical demands of refereeing, and how do you go about structuring it and signposting it so you know you're on track and you maintain motivation and you don't go flying hell for leather for 2 weeks and then you fall off the wagon for weeks 3, 4 and 5. So it's really getting a good overview of what a good pre-season would look like for a referee. So first of all, what are you preparing for? You're preparing for endurance, so games 60 minutes or more, given added time or extra time or any of that. So you've got to have endurance to last the game. Speed, you know yourself. I mean, I'm talking to people who are doing this week in, week out. So you know that at times you have to go full tilt to keep up a play, or to be ahead of play, or get yourself in the right position so you can see what's important. Change of direction as well. Ball changes direction very quickly. You've got to move. So that's important too, being able to have good reactions and get yourself in the right spot. And then bad pitches as well. So in terms of when we think about pre-season, like players as well, we go back out in the pitch in early next year, and it's not wonderful grounds we're playing on. So in terms of injury prevention and just being fit to deal with heavy, soggy pitches is important, because you know yourselves, you have to be as best you can in the right place at the right time as the game is progressing. So there's a good bit to be preparing for, and all of those physical demands. When you get to where you need to be, you have to make decisions. You have to be aware. You can't be thinking, "Oh my God, I'm wrecked." You have to be thinking about what's happening here and make decisions under fatigue. So that's really, really, really important. The fitter you are, the clearer your decision making will be. You know, if you're struggling to get around the pitch, that will have a knock-on effect, which I know you all know that. So what would a good pre-season look like? The really important things about pre-season, there's a couple of mistakes that are made all the time, and I kind of alluded to it already, that people go hell for leather and they go too hard too quick and either get injured, or they run out of steam, or they plateau. So you get, the first 2 or 3 weeks you're flying it and it's improve, and then all of a sudden it just stops and you're killing yourself, you're slogging away, but you don't feel like, I'm not getting any better here, this is just getting harder every week. So when you're thinking about how to put together a good preseason, the first thing to do, in my opinion, is start where you're at. So whatever you've done, so you may not have put one foot in front of the other in a pair of boots or a pair of runners for 2 months, and that's fine. So be it. So you've got to figure out, well, this is what I'm able for now, and that's my starting point. And start with what you're able for. Your first couple of sessions shouldn't be you crawling back in the door. It should be what you can manage. The second bit is progression of intensity. So for 2 reasons. One, from an injury prevention point of view, too hard, too early can lead to injury. Also, from a motivation point of view, there has to be somewhere to go. You have to be able to progress over time. Really, really important that you don't kill yourself in the first week and then you're like, this is too hard, I'm opting out, and you just, everything fizzles out. Another point from an injury prevention point of view, what we're always trying to do from a physical load or demand of training, this is the exact same stuff for players as referees, that what you're trying to avoid all the time is a big spike in training load. And training load is basically the volume and intensity of the work that you're doing, how your body copes with that. So if you go from nothing to a massive training load and you try and make that big jump, that can be a red flag for injuries. Or if you yo-yo up and down, excuse me, if you're yo-yoing up and down. So what you don't want is a big spike and then you do nothing. Another big spike, oh, and I haven't done that in 5 days, so I better go out and kill myself. You're better off slowly building up your intensity and then keeping it just nice, steady ups and downs across a period of time. Okay, that jumped on me there. I don't know what's happening here. It was when I coughed. I jumped the slides. Sorry about this now. Okay, lovely. So that's really important, the ups and downs and the progression of intensity. So you don't want big spikes. It's nice and even, just gentle increases and decreases. The other piece that's important in a good preseason is signposts. Again, for your own personal motivation and the psychological element of it. So understanding where you're at and giving yourselves opportunities to measure again in a couple of weeks. Oh, I've improved by a bit, and measure again in a couple of weeks and I've improved by another bit. And we talk practical examples later on. I'll show you different ways how you can use the same activity and just improve it or layer it or make it a little bit more challenging week on week. So you're able to say, oh God, in week number 1 I did this, and in week number 3 I'm now doing an extra 5 minutes. So that's really important, just to keep you on track. And finally, and you may agree or disagree, or when people think of preseason, sometimes they just think of slogging around in bad weather. But to me, it has to be enjoyable. You have to feel like, okay, I'm improving, I'm getting ready for something positive, I'm doing this because I want to do it, because I want to be a good, fit and healthy referee. The key to making it enjoyable is that idea of making it manageable and progressing over time. And we'll talk about the practicalities of that now. So a pre-season usually lasts, now it can, depending on the structure of a team and various things, it can last anywhere from nearly 4 weeks to 12 weeks or anything really, but a 6 weeks one is usually common. So if you think about the first 2 weeks, that's really just, you're getting ready to up the intensity. You're not trying to push yourself on in those first 2 weeks. It's just getting yourself ready, getting your body and your mind ready. Then week 3 to 6, that's when you target, okay, I'm going to push the boundaries a little bit. This is the one where when I'm ready and I've got a foundation, I'm going to push myself on here. So thinking about that nearly easing in period and then pushing on for the latter stages of it. This is the highs and lows that I talked about. So this is just arbitrary. I've put, you'll see at the bottom, TTS. So Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Imagining you're training 3 times a week. Orange there being medium intensity, red being higher intensity. So you see those first 4 sessions are orange. And maybe they're on the way up, they're increasing the first, second and third one. And I drop down for the 4th one because I know number 5, I'm going to push on there. So having that in your head and in your plan, that there are key sessions that you build up, okay, and on that particular day, I'm going to go for it. And on that day, I'm going to try and step it up a gear. And then after the first red one, you're dropping down again. And then you're pushing on later. And you'll see there I've left a question mark, and I'm sure you'll all preempt this one if I'm saying, well, what type of sessions should come next? And after 2 reds in a row, then you're dropping it down to an orange again. Because you can't just keep pushing the body, especially if it's cold weather and you could be in January and rain and sleet and God knows what. You want to keep healthy and you want to keep a consistent training. So if you push yourself too hard in a short period of time, you end up burning out or just getting sick, getting a cold or something like that. So little and often in terms of the red sessions, and nice consistent progression over the 6 weeks, if it's a 6 weeks. Claire, any questions coming in there?
Yeah, Clean, I have one coming in that says, if you're maybe a bit of an older or, as we say, experienced referee, that might be carrying a bit of excess weight than they should be, where should they start? You know, where's the starting block for them?
Yeah, well, it's very hard to I guess, without knowing the person or knowing injury history or anything like that. So what I would say is, often if you're carrying a little bit of extra weight, running can be hard. It can be hard on the joints. So things like if you can get out on a bike or a stationary bike to get your heart rate, your heart and lungs, get them working, get your heart rate up, and maybe try and lose a little bit of that weight off feet. We call that off feet conditioning, because running can be hard on the body. And I think if let's say running is something you struggle with, start manageable. Start saying, I'm going to run for 5 minutes. I'm going to try and do kind of steady state laps of the pitch, 5 minutes. Then I'm going to take 2 or 3 minutes off, and I'm going to do another 5 minutes. And if that's all you can manage on day one, that's fine. And then maybe the second day, so that'll be 10 minutes total. And the second session you go out and you say, right, I did 2 sets of 5 minutes, and session number 2, I'm going to do 3 sets of 4 minutes. So now I'm up to 12, but I've broken it down. So there's no point in killing yourself at the start. Go out and test yourself with something easy and see how you get on.
One of the revs have asked here as well, what's better? Is it running or spinning?
Running or spinning? Well, depends, because as a referee, you've got to run, right? So you're going to have to run at some point. Spinning is good for that element of off feet. So if it's spinning, you can get a really good cardiovascular workout. So heart and lungs can be working really hard on the spin bike. So that element of fitness is working. Are you going to improve your aerobic capacity? Yes, you are. But anyone who has done both of those knows that there's nothing that prepares you for running other than running. If you are somebody that has maybe, let's call it an experienced referee, maybe the knees aren't great or the hips can get sore with a lot of running, supplementing one running session with another spin session until you kind of build up a volume of running can be good. So rather than doing nothing, doing a spin will be good.
And just the last one here, I suppose, before we move on, for the referees, do you recommend running the pitch specifically, or doing the likes of, say, 5Ks? I think you're probably going to cover that later, aren't you, Clean?
Yeah, I'm going to cover that, yeah. I'm going to go into detail with that one. Okay. Are we happy enough to go on?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, next one. So physical demands, you guys know this inside out. So the endurance, it's stop-start for 60 minutes, there's repeated sprints, and we talked about you're trying to delay the onset of fatigue from an injury prevention point of view and a decision-making point of view. Strength and power then, so why do you need to be strong or powerful? So strength and power feed into speed, and they both feed into change of direction, and also good leg strength. You're going to reduce the risk of injuries for the lower body especially. So in terms of just being well-rounded and fit and healthy, yes, you need endurance, but a bit of strength is important too. Okay, so we talked about this, the 2 sections, the week 1 and 2, getting ready to up the intensity, and the week 3 and 6, targeted pushing the boundaries. So if you think about why, week 1 and 2, so the goals, just getting volume into the legs, just getting a little bit of work done. Number 2, getting the DOMS out of the way. So if you haven't heard of DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. So no matter who you are, if you are Usain Bolt, if you are Niamh McAvoy, whoever, Mo Farah, if you haven't run in a couple of weeks and you go out and run, the next day, 24, 48 hours later, your legs are going to be sore. And that's going to happen until you build up a bit of volume and you just get accustomed to running again. So you want to get them out of the way with the easier sessions, let's say, establishing where you're at. We talked about that already, and starting with something you can do. So make it manageable for those first 2 weeks. 3 to 6, then, this is where you're planning sessions that are going to push you on. You're staying healthy between those sessions. As the intensity of the running goes up, then you keep up your gym work or your stretching, because you're putting more demands on your body from a running point of view. So you want to try and do all the things around that to keep you healthy, and in order to make sure that you can train continuously. What you don't want to do is ideally, you don't want to have to take a big block of your pre-season off. You want to be able to tip along all the way throughout. So that's a good idea. That's some good pointers for what those 2 sections of pre-season should look like. From a injury point of view, and this is important too, again, like players, in order to be a referee, you need to be injury free so you can be on the pitch. So a couple of pointers when you're thinking about how to minimize the risk of injury, especially if you're coming from not having done anything for a while. Number 1, warming up before sessions when it's cold out and all of that, giving your body a chance. That's important, not just going into it cold, especially on red sessions if you want to push yourself on. Intensity, progressively increasing the intensity of your training. We talked about that already. And if you look at the top left-hand side of the screen there, so intensity of a session, like what do we mean by that? How do you increase that, or what is intensity? So I have 4 examples there of how you can increase intensity or change intensity. Number 1 is duration. So running for 40 minutes versus running for 50 minutes, the 50-minute session is more intense because there's more of it. So just the duration, the total time of your activity. Reps and volume and high intensity. Let's say you're doing 80-meter runs and you do 4 sets of 8, and the next session you do 4 sets of 10. So there's more repetitions of those high intensity running, and that's going to be more intense. Density of reps, that's another thing to think about. So let's say you did those 4 sets of 8. You're running 80 meters, you did 4 sets of 8 runs. Now on week number 1, you're giving yourself 20 seconds rest between each run. On week number 2, you drop that rest down to 10 seconds. You're getting half the amount of rest. So the runs now they're squished together more. So you're up, the quick rest, and you're back down again. So squishing the work together makes it more intense, less rest in between. And finally then, linear versus change of direction. So when you're running in a straight line, yes, heart and lungs are going and hamstrings and legs are working, but it's all in the one direction. You don't have to decelerate or change direction. If you add in change of direction into those types of sessions, all of a sudden you've got to slow down, you've got to re-accelerate, your joints and your musculoskeletal system have to work in a different way. So adding in change of direction also increases intensity on the body. And that's the one, so often you get people are coming back from injury. We say, right, we'll start them with straight line running. And then after a couple of weeks, you start introducing gentle change of direction because it's different requirements. So using those ideas in your head to progress the intensity of your training over pre-season is important. Third point is speed. This is a really important one, especially if you have any injury history in hamstrings specifically. So slowly building up your sprinting over 2 or 3 sessions. If you go out cold without having done that in 2 or 3 weeks, and you try and sprint full tilt, it mightn't go very well. So you're allowing yourself a couple of sessions to build up that speed again and get used to lengthening the stride, opening the body up, okay? So not going full tilt on the first or second sessions. Then the red sessions, everything doesn't have to be hard. Every session doesn't have to end with you crawling in the door or barely able to take your boots off. So yes, there are some times when you got to push on. If you want to get fitter, you got to push yourself a bit. But that doesn't have to be every session. Identifying which ones are going to be hard, drop back down, make it manageable, give the body a rest. You're still working, you're still getting fitter, but you're not pushing the needle into the red every single session. And you'll find then the red sessions, you're fresher and you're able to push on more than if you're trying to do that every day. Then turning. and include control, change of direction in your preseason. And we'll talk about what that might look like specifically now in a minute or two. Claire, do you need to jump in on there?
Yeah, probably both questions aren't overly relevant to this point, but I know you will be leading on to them, so you might want to take up on them now. The first one is, what is the balance between the gym and the pitch runs? Like, what would you recommend as a balance between like gym work, which I presume to mean your strength and conditioning work, and on the pitch actually sprinting?
So that's kind of an individual question. Often what happens is people kind of front load the pre-season with, so as the running goes up, the gym work kind of goes down a little bit. So you might start with week number 1, 2 gym sessions, 1 running or something like that, and that's for week 1 and 2. And then in week 3 to 6 you do 2 running and 1 gym. And it also depends on how much you like to train, whether you're someone that says I can train 3 nights a week and that's it, or 2 nights a week, or I love training so I'm going to train 5 nights a week. So it is quite individual, but generally speaking, across a pre-season, the first half of it, I would say it should be quite evenly balanced, a 50-50 split. And then as you get closer to the matches are coming and in season, you might move a bit more to the running. You might weight it a bit more running. But also that can change week to week. So on week A, you can do 2 running and 1 gym. On week B, you do 2 gym and 1 running. So it kind of depends on the individual, to be honest. I know that's probably not exactly helpful.
No, and probably facilities as well, what you have in front of you, and especially with restrictions regarding COVID, whether you're doing a home workout or you can go and find floodlights to do a run. I suppose there are all these things individual plans that you have to make up for yourself.
Yeah.
The second one is, and this is probably you're going to build on this as well, is in preparation for the yo-yo test, which is the standardised refereeing test that we use at county, provincial and national level. Would you recommend doing more speed and sprint work or practicing the test repeatedly?
I would do a bit of both, to be honest with you. I think, so with any of that, there's no harm in practicing the test for sure. 100% practice the test. But if you just keep doing the same stimulus all the time, you kind of plateau. I would use that test as if you're on one of those panels and you know you're going to get tested, I would use it as your one of your signposts. You know where you need to be at, so that's your signpost all the time. And then I think I would attack it from both sides. I would do some speed, some repeated sprints and speed work, and I would do some aerobic stuff, especially at a pre-season stage. I think attacking it from both sides and you meet in the middle then for that nice balance of the two. The other thing that from an individual point of view, maybe you're someone who's fast, so you've good speed, but your aerobic capacity lets you down. Or maybe you can do 10Ks all day, but it's your speed that lets you down. So it depends on where you're at on that scale, would dictate what thing you need to focus on. Whatever your weak point is, I'd focus on that. If it's a bit of both, then you do a bit of both. Okay. So here is an example of a 6-week training plan. All right. Now this is me putting together an overview of what it might look like without knowing who the person is or their needs or requirements, but it might give you a sense of progression. So I've done it that you're going to do 2 running sessions a week, and the top row there, it says work capacity on the left hand side. So that is that aerobic base. Okay. And that is, so you'd see week 1, run 2K, rest for 5 minutes, run 2K, rest for another 5 minutes, and finish with a 1K run. So that's 5 kilometers in total. And you'll see across the 6 weeks how that will progress. So on week number 4 and 5, it peaks at 7 kilometers. But you'll notice, I don't think in any of those it's longer than a 2K run. So if you think about it then, so let's say week number 3, the total session volume there is 5.5 kilometers. So what is the difference between this and going out and running a 5K? So with this, if you see week number 3, we're looking at here, top row. So you're jogging for a kilometer, then you're running 500 meters, jog 500, run 500, jog 500, run 1K, jog 500, run 1K. All right. So the difference with this is when you're running, you should be able to run at a higher intensity. So if you go out and just run a flat 5.5K, you'll be kind of steady the whole way. So what you're doing with this is you're pushing yourself on, running at a higher intensity. You're trying to recover on the move. Pushing yourself on, recover on the move. For a referee, I think this would be more beneficial, especially if you're only training a couple of nights a week. Because as you know in the game, you've got high intensity efforts, you're recovering on the move, you're always on the move, but it's up and down and up and down. It's not just a steady pace. So running a 5K in this type of pattern, I think is more beneficial than just a steady state one. If we move then to the second session, so it's speed and change of direction. So you'll see that week number 1, so EL is end line. So this is done as if you're on a pitch. So you're just running end line to end line. So 75% from one end of the pitch to the other, walk for 30 seconds, run back for 20 minutes. That's just getting yourself into it. And if by chance you're struggling with it and you need to walk for 45 seconds, so be it. But you just keep going, whatever you can do for that 20 minutes. Across the weeks then, you'll see the start of the session always starts with the speed exposure. So 20 meter lead in, build up for 20 meters, take off for 50. In week number 2, that's 75 to 80%. So you're still not going full tilt. Week number 6, then you're up at 90%. So that's you're sprinting in week number 6. But you don't have to do that in week number 2 or 3. Now, as you'll see, you run that 50 meter run or 20 meter lead in, 50 meter run, and then you walk back. So you get loads of recovery, walk back, and then you try and run fast again. Loads of recovery, try and run fast again. That's just exposing you to running fast, letting those hamstrings get used to it. Then you'll see intro to change of direction, and I'll show you a couple of examples of that. That's building in that control change of direction. And then the last bit there on week 3 to 6, you'll see lead in and lead out. So this is sort of that repeated sprint idea. So 10 meters to lead in, so 10 meters to kind of pick up your speed, 50 meter run, 10 meters to lead out. Take 10 seconds rest, and then you're off again on the way back. In week number 3, you're doing 4 sets with 3 minutes rest in between. Okay, and each set is 6 runs. Then you'll see in week number 4, you're doing 4 sets of 8. So you're adding 2 reps per set, and that's how you would progress that. So that's just an example. And you'll see then I have a test yourself, the bottom row, test yourself in week number 2. So after you've got a little bit done, you've got 2 sessions under your belt, then in week number 2, give yourself a test. And then week number 6, test again. You could test in week number 4 as well if you wanted. So that is really just an example of how you might lay it out. Okay. Next slide. So here's an example of 3 change of directions. Okay. I don't need to talk through each of these. You can see them and the description is underneath. But the point is to try and practice, expose yourself to different types of turning, different types of change of direction. The only thing I will say, in the first exercise on the left-hand side, you'll see the turns they're all forward facing and they're kind of maybe 45-degree turns. So everything's going forward. Then in the middle one, in change of direction number 2, sorry, I don't know why that, yeah, change of direction number 2, you're nearly going 90-degree turns. So the turning is getting a little bit more demanding. And then in change of direction 3, you'll see there's a full deceleration and a 180. So in terms of demands on the joints and the knees, change of direction 3 is much harder than change of direction 1. Okay. Claire, anything coming in there?
No, nothing that needs covered at the moment.
Super. Okay. I also wanted to give you a couple of other examples of ways you might set things up. I'm going to show you this one and another one after this in the same sort of layout. I love this sort of stuff. Okay, I think it's good physically and mentally, and it's a really good pre-season setup. So this is something you could lay, and by the way, for any of you who are coaching teams, you can do the same type of stuff for that first couple of weeks of training. This is laid out on a pitch. 21 to 21 is the work zone. Okay, so if you start at the green cone in the top left, you're running up the pitch, 21 to 21. when you get up there, there's an activity. So you'll see the little cones there. So that could be 4 cones in and out, change direction, shuffling. You could have a ladder. So just some little activity to move your body left and right. So it's not just all straight line running. And then you're taking off back down the pitch again. And then you're walking. So on where the green arrow is, you walk across a little bit, and then you're off again up the pitch. And then same thing. And you can do that based on time. So I say there, session 1 is 3 sets of 4 minutes. So start at the green cone, start your watch, 4 minutes. And you just go as far as you can in 4 minutes. And then you take a rest. And you kind of know, you mark in your head, okay, I got 2.5 laps done there in that 4 minutes. And then you're off again. And session number 2, you're going, okay, now I'm going to do 4 sets of 4 minutes. And you're trying to do a little bit better than you did in session 1. The nice thing about changing it up with activities like that in between is sometimes if you're doing a lot of straight line running, you can find your back gets sore when it's all just in one straight line. So changing it up a little bit, that is good from a boredom point of view and from a physical point of view too. So that would be one example. Now we're going to go the same layout. It's the same thing, but in this case you are running up the pitch. Then the purple arrows, they're it says orange, but they're actually purple. And then the purple arrows, you're going to jog those. And then on the way back down the pitch where the cones are, you're taking off again at speed through that, whatever that activity is. That just could be a side shuffle, or you can change it every week, some sort of activity. And then when you get back down to the other end, you're walking again. So all you've done is move the activity to the middle, and you're going to go through those at pace. Right? Think about it again. Your stop, start, or up a gear, down a gear. Gear number 5, drop into 4, drop into 3. Then you're off again, gear number 5. So that's sort of interval running with some sort of movement in between. So and that is just one example. So you are all well able to come up with your own version of that. Okay, that's appropriate for your level.
You could practice even blowing your whistle every time you hit an activity.
You absolutely could, yeah. And you look like a right clown, but it'd be worth it, yeah.
Someone's asked a wee question here, Clean. I might throw it out to you now as well. Yeah. Would you recommend using speed bands to improve your speed?
You can. So I'm presuming when someone is saying speed bands, are they the things that you put around each knee and with the elastic in between? You can. I personally don't use them. I think to improve your speed, one of the best things is to just run fast. So what people often forget is if you want to practice, if you want to get better at running fast, you've got to run fast, and you've also got to give yourself enough break in between. Often people do repeated sprints, so they're up and down, up and down, up and down. They're not giving themselves enough recovery in between. So as they're going up and down, they're actually getting slower and slower and slower. So you're not allowing yourself to run full tilt. That's why at the start of that template that I had, you run that 60 meters and you walk back really slow. So you're getting a minute or two before you have to go again. I don't have any issue with speed bands. I personally just have never used them with the team or anything like that. If you want to get faster, a couple of things. Running, you have to run fast. And also just general strength work will improve that as well. Okay. Here's an example of a warm-up. I don't need to talk through this. It'll be on your slides, which I'm sure you're going to get. And I'm sure you know all this stuff, but it's there. I'll just bring you down to part E, which is 4 build-up runs to 85%. So at the end of your warm-up, pretty much whatever you're doing, I would recommend that you do just a few warm-up runs. Now, it's easy to cut short on this. And especially if you're doing a speed session, you're like, I won't bother do the warm-up runs. I'll just go into this. But if your first activity is speed exposure, you want to make sure you do a nice warm-up beforehand. Okay, so signposts. So what signposts could you use? And you mentioned the yo-yo test. So if you can download that, Top End Sports. If you Google that or Google the app for that. Like I have an app on my phone that you can get those yo-yo tests on. I'm sure you know it already. So put it on the phone, earphones in the ear, and you'll have all that. So that can be done. If you don't use the yo-yo test, or if you don't have to, here are 2 others that you can use. again, you'll get all this, so I don't need to talk you through it. But one of them is an out and back test, a bronco test. It finishes at 1.2 kilometers. And the other one, if you've no measuring tape or anything like that, just a simple time trial on your local pitch or wherever you train. So if you go to the local pitch, and what I usually tell people is run from end line to end line 10 times. And that will always be roughly somewhere between 1.1 and 1.5 kilometers, roughly. And then you record your total time. And those goalposts will never move. And it's the same place all the time. So you can retest really easy. If your battery goes or whatever. So, I mean, if you, instead of doing the yo-yo or whatever, but to be honest, any test like this is fine, whatever you want to do. But if you are on a panel that has to do the yo-yo, it's no harm in having a trial run, so you know exactly where you're at. So that is the signposting. They're just examples that you can use. Now we're going to talk about strength. So as Claire alluded to, you know, where we are now, you don't know whether you're going to have access to a gym or not, or what the story is. So these are two things, and some of you may have seen these before if I was talking to you during the summer. These are two easy ways to get basic strength work done. And we won't talk through every exercise, but a tempo circuit is always very good if you only have light equipment or maybe body weight, or maybe you have 110 kg dumbbell or whatever. So this one's an easy one to do. The whole principle of this is slow pace timing. So if you think of a goblet squat is when you hold a weight or something or a medicine ball in front of your body and you squat up and down. So the whole principle of this is that you go at least 2 seconds down, 2 seconds up, and it's nice and slow. And you try not to pause at all. You try not to drive up to the top, take a break, and then you're off again. You try and have it continuously up and down. And I've given you a sample circuit. Again, some of you might have a dodgy knee and you can't do split squat and you have to put in another lower body exercise. That's fine. But what I would suggest is a mixture of upper and lower body exercise. To progress this, as you can see, week 1 to week 6, 4 sets on week 1 with a 30 seconds of one exercise, 30 seconds to rest, and then you start the second exercise and you continue for 20 minutes. And then as you go through the weeks, you'll see week number 2, it's the same number of sets, same time, but this time you're doing the exercise for 35 seconds and you're resting for 25. So you're starting on the minute and you're just doing it for 5 seconds longer. So when you do this, you'll find that the first couple of rounds, you think, geez, this is grand, this is easy. But it's the set 3 and 4 and 5 that you'll start to get tired then, and you're trying to keep form and keep everything, keep that 2 seconds up and down. So that's a really easy one. It's good for aerobic capacity in the muscles themselves, and it doesn't require a lot of equipment, and because it's slow, you naturally have to use lighter weights anyway because you're doing the movement so slow. So that's an easy one to do at home or the side of a pitch or whatever you want. Second one then, now this is more complicated, so you can Google all this stuff anyway. But basically this is an example of a general full body strength session that you could do week 1 to week 6 and how you would progress it. Okay, and in it includes single leg exercises, because again you might just have dumbbells at home, so the single leg exercise you'll always use less weight, and so it's handy if you only have dumbbells. It includes a bit of jumping and landing, so from a power point of view to practice jumping, and from landing in terms of your deceleration and your change of direction, that's all important, and upper body and core. So this is a bit of everything in one place. So I won't talk through every exercise, but I just wanted to give you an example of what that might look like. And as I said, for this one, because it's all single leg, you can probably do this all at home, and you could do it with a medicine ball or light dumbbells as well. Okay. So, Sinead, and I'm racing through all of that, and I'm sure there are a couple of questions now.
Yeah, so we'll just open it up here now, guys. If anybody has any questions that they'd like answered, or that was covered tonight, or anything that wasn't, that they would like we have further information on, if you just type it in, I can answer them now. Ray, I see you're asking about a date of return. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't really have one. That'll be up to government guidelines, but we're hoping that 2021 will be an awful lot more of a normal season than it was beforehand. So plan your pre-season like you normally would. One of the reps has said here that they have runner's knee. Have you any tips on how to manage the runner's knee?
So with runner's knee, I suppose it's challenging because often what you need is a bit of rest. I don't know, are they doing any strength work or any work with a physio or anything like that? Maybe they might
see if he comes back. And while we're waiting for that, post-workout recovery, so that's a good one. What would you recommend?
In terms of nutrition or in terms of stretching? So obviously a post session, doing a proper warm down, eating a good meal within probably 20 minutes or probably 30 minutes or an hour. And a point on nutrition, actually, if you can figure out what are the most demanding sessions, and then on those days you've licensed to kind of eat a little bit more, and because if you know this is my real hard running session, eat a good lunch, eat 2 hours in advance, and then have a good quality meal plan for afterwards. So sometimes people again think, well, I'm in pre-season and therefore I have to really cut down on everything that I'm eating. And yes, if you're trying to maybe control your weight a little bit or get a little bit fitter in that sense, yes, you need to be cognizant of everything that you're eating, but also you're trying to push yourself in those sessions. You're trying to perform. So especially around those harder red sessions, eat well. Don't be kind of counting the calories or cutting down on food on those particular days. Eat well around those demanding sessions.
And what about hydration, Cliona? Would there any sort of drinks you would be a go-to drink to go to that you would recommend regarding hydration? It's been asked here.
Yeah, to be honest with you, and it's not a plug for an LGFA partner, but I use the ORS rehydration tablets. I find them tasty. I find them nice to drink, and I think those, again, especially on after heavy trainings or even before big sweaty sessions, I would eat them. And we all know about just having a look at the colour of your pee. If your pee is brown, drink a bit more water and maybe throw some oars into it. But I find them very good myself.
What about a rest day? What do we mean by rest day? Is it lie on the sofa, feet up, or is it stretching, swimming, yoga? What's the recommendations?
So this is an interesting one, and there's a whole batch of, what would you say, products, and there's a whole discourse around recovery and what it is, and you wear compression gear and you I don't know, get into a bath of bananas or I don't know, mad stuff, right? But the most important thing is relaxing and allowing yourself time off from thinking about your training and worrying about how fit you are. So absolutely relax. If you have DOMS or if you're stiff or sore, the best thing to do for that is move a little bit, to get out and go for a walk or go for an easy cycle or do a little bit of stretching, because you want to send a bit of blood around the body. You want the heart rate to get up a little bit. So it's kind of, or a swim in a local pool or something light, basically. And it also depends on what you need. If you're absolutely exhausted and you just want to lie on the couch, watch a movie and go to bed early, well, then maybe that's just what you need to do. The best recovery tool is a good night's sleep. And it sounds simplistic, but it really, really is. And for stiffness or soreness, sometimes that just light 20, 30 minutes exercise, something very light now is good. And that could be going out down to the pitch with your kids and kicking around. That's enough,
Sorry, the drink is called ORS, folks. They are a partnership with us in ladies football, so we would use them all the time. They're very good. I would use them myself. So it's just, they have a website which is just orshydration.ie. And if anybody's interested, somebody's just asked the question in the name of them again there. Just looking to see if there's any more questions for you. So back on to the runner's knee one, somebody has said shin splints. Would the combination of using the strength training instead of just all the running help with them?
Yeah, for sure. Shin splints are really annoying because they're just sore. And the more you run, it just aggravates it. So if you've got shin splints and you keep running, they're probably not going to go away. So usually what people do is they rest for a period of time and try and strengthen up the lower body. Strength training isn't a cure for shin splints as such, but having a stronger lower body does reduce the risk of that often. But sometimes when it comes on, there's nothing you can do apart from take a bit of rest. So that'll be a good example of when you go spinning instead. So okay, I'm going to stay off the feet for a little while. And again, especially this time of year, or January, pitches are hard, they're icy, so that, or if you're running on the roads, that can aggravate it too. But that's a really good example of where you still want to get your cardio hit in every week. So on a bike, swimming pool, boxing, anything that doesn't require impact. It's the impact that's going to get you with that one.
Okay, well, that's perfect. Cliona, that seems to be us for this evening. So just to wrap up, folks, hopefully you enjoyed that session this evening. It was great. This is being recorded, so it will be on our LGFA YouTube channel. So you can go back and look at the slides and look at the plans that are in place for a bit of guidance. And just, I think, to take a couple of the key points out of there, train for the sport that you're involved in. So, referees don't run half marathons. So as Cliona said, if you're going to do a 5K, 1 kilometre, then maybe 500 meters, a bit of sprinting work, and make it suitable, the game that you're involved with, and then recover and try to build in. Sometimes our referees forget about the importance of the strength training, and that is just building in like the goblin squats and keeping your legs and your bodies really strong and making sure your injury prevention, and especially with referees, I know what you're like, most of them referee 6 or 7 games a week, so make sure you take the rest when your body tells you to. So just guys, thanks very much for logging on this evening. Thank you very much for Cliona for sharing your tips with us, and we'll see you all in the future.
Thanks a million.